Welcome to Starbound Valor HFY. Subscribe now and dive into daily epic sci-fi adventures where humanity always rises. Commander Aiden Cross stood at the front window of the human exploration ship the Valiant, watching the dark wall of space grow larger. It was not a real wall, but it looked like one, an endless shadow stretching across the stars. This was the border that every species feared. This was the Supremacy's forbidden zone. No ship that crossed it had ever returned. Every log, every warning, every rumor said the same thing. The Supremacy did not forgive intruders. Aiden knew this, and still, he moved the ship forward. The engines hummed softly, as if whispering their own fear. The crew worked in silence. Each face showed the same mixture of worry and courage. They all understood the mission. A research team had gone missing inside this dark region. Humans never abandoned their own, even when the path was deadly. Aiden checked the last beacon message floating on the screen. The robotic voice repeated the same warning: turn back or be erased. This was the final point. Beyond it, no other warnings existed. Beyond it, only the Supremacy watched. Aiden took a slow breath. "We enter," he said. His voice was calm, but his heart beat faster. The ship crossed the border. The stars behind them dimmed, as if some invisible hand pulled the light away. Inside the forbidden zone, space felt heavier, thicker. Everyone felt it. Even the ship felt it, the metal groaning softly as if something pressed against it from all sides. At first, everything was quiet. Too quiet. Then the alarms started. A sharp red light flashed across the bridge. The screen showed a massive energy spike right behind them. Something had awakened. Something big. A shadow grew on the radar, something the size of a city. It moved without sound, without light, without any sign of engines. It simply glided through space like a silent predator. Aiden ordered full power to shields, but the ship barely responded. It was as if the darkness itself held them tightly. "What is that?" whispered one of the crew. No one answered. The shadow stopped right behind them. The noise on the comms changed. A whisper. A broken signal. A voice slowly pushed through the static, cold and ancient. "You should not be here, humans." The entire crew froze. No one had expected contact so soon. Aiden stepped forward. "Identify yourself," he said, trying to sound strong. The voice returned, this time sharper. "You stand in the territory of the Supremacy. You were warned." The shadow outside shifted, revealing part of its shape. It was a warship, bigger than anything humans had ever built. Its hull was pure black, absorbing all light. No windows. No markings. Only the Supremacy symbol glowing faintly, 3 red lines crossing each other like claws. The human ship tried to move, but every system was locked. It felt like giant invisible chains held them in place. Aiden tried manual control. No reaction. He tried emergency thrusters. Nothing. It was like the ship was trapped inside thick mud. The voice returned again. "State your purpose." Aiden steadied himself. "We are searching for a missing research team. They entered this region and did not return. We mean no harm." There was a long silence. Then a low, amused sound. Humans, always stepping where they should not. The crew exchanged worried looks. The Supremacy was famous for cruelty, not conversation. The giant warship moved closer, so close the metal of the Valiant vibrated. The ship's sensors flickered, unable to measure its full size. The Supremacy voice spoke once more. "You will surrender your vessel. Resistance will end in destruction." Aiden clenched his jaw. Surrender meant death, or worse. He knew the stories. The crew looked at him, waiting, trusting him. He could feel their fear, but also their hope. Humans had survived impossible odds before. They could do it again. Aiden shut off the comms. "No surrender," he said. His voice was soft but firm. Before he could say more, the Supremacy ship charged its main weapon. A bright red light lit the darkness like a rising sun. The humans braced for impact, but nothing happened. Instead, the Valiant shook violently. The power cut for a moment. The lights flickered. Something was pulling them backward. Something strong. "We're being dragged," the pilot shouted. The shadow ship was using a gravity lock, a weapon strong enough to rip apart smaller vessels. The hull groaned louder. Metal strained, bending under the force. Aiden felt the pull too, like invisible hands grabbing his chest. Then, suddenly, everything stopped. The gravity lock shut off. The Supremacy ship paused, as if studying them. A new voice came through. Quieter. Sharper. "Your ship resisted our gravity lock." Curious. That was impossible. Humans did not have the technology to resist such power. But somehow, they were still alive. Aiden sensed the Supremacy's confusion. That gave him a small spark of hope. "We are not here to fight," he said, reopening the comms. "We only want our people back." The voice answered slowly, almost thoughtfully. "Your people entered a place even we do not enter. They are lost." Aiden stepped closer to the screen. "Then we will find them." Silence followed. Heavy silence. The kind that meant the enemy was thinking, considering, judging. Finally, the voice spoke again. "Your courage is inefficient, yet interesting." The giant warship backed away a little. Not much, but enough to release some pressure on the Valiant's hull. Aiden felt air return to his lungs. The crew exhaled softly. But the danger was not over. Not even close. The Supremacy voice spoke with finality. "You may go deeper. But everything beyond this point is death." The signal cut. The shadow ship vanished into the dark like a living nightmare. The crew looked at Aiden. The path ahead was darker than anything they had seen. But humans did not break. Humans moved forward. "We continue," Aiden said. And the Valiant pushed deeper into the forbidden zone. Unseen by them, something small and silent attached itself to their hull, a Supremacy hunter drone. Watching. Recording. Waiting. The forbidden zone had only just begun. The Valiant drifted deeper into the Supremacy's forbidden zone, its engines whispering softly as the crew tried to steady their nerves. The alarms had finally stopped, but the silence felt worse. It was not the peaceful kind of silence. It was the kind that watched you, waited for you, and judged every breath you took. Commander Aiden Cross kept his eyes on the forward screen, his jaw tight. The shadow of the Supremacy warship still haunted his mind. They had survived the first encounter, but he knew the Supremacy was not done with them. They were never done. "Sensors?" Aiden asked. His voice cut through the tension like a small, steady light. "Still unstable," the technician replied. "The area is full of interference. I can't see more than a few kilometers ahead." Aiden didn't like that. Space was huge. Not being able to see was like walking blindfolded in a forest full of traps. The darkness outside seemed to pulse, thick and alive. It was as if the forbidden zone itself breathed. Suddenly the ship jerked. Not hard, but enough for everyone to grab their seats. "What was that?" Aiden asked sharply. "Unknown," the pilot said. "Something touched our hull." A cold wave passed through the room. Nothing should be close enough to touch them. Not without sensors detecting it. Aiden opened the external cameras. Static. Blackness. Only the faint glow of distant stars. But something felt wrong. Something felt present. "Watching." "Check systems," Aiden ordered. "All systems green," the engineer replied. Nothing unusual. But it was not normal. They all knew it. The crew looked around nervously, hearing sounds that were not really sounds. Soft vibrations, tiny shifts in the ship's metal skin. As if something crawled on the outside. Aiden kept calm, but his thoughts raced. He could not show fear. Not now. Not ever. Humans did not bend. Humans did not break. A sudden beeping filled the bridge. A communication signal. But not from any human frequency. The same voice from before, but colder. Stronger. Human vessel, it said. You continue deeper. You ignore warnings. Aiden took a slow breath. We have no choice, he replied. We told you our mission. The voice hissed softly, like metal dragging over stone. Your mission is irrelevant. Your survival is unlikely. The Valiant slowed as the shadow ship appeared again, materializing from the darkness like a waking nightmare. It did not move like a machine. It moved like a living shadow, sliding through the void with unnatural grace. Its huge form circled the Valiant, studying it from every angle. The crew held their breath. The Supremacy ship could destroy them at any moment. One shot, one pulse, and humans would be reduced to dust drifting in space. But instead of firing, the alien commander spoke. We expected you to break, yet you remain. This confuses us. Aiden stood tall. Humans don't give up. The voice paused. A strange, deep hum echoed through the comms. Your species displays unreasonable stubbornness. Aiden almost smiled. We call it determination. Another long silence followed. The Supremacy warship stopped circling and positioned itself in front of the Valiant, blocking their path like a giant gatekeeper. We will test you, the voice said at last. If you fail, you die. If you pass, you may proceed. The crew exchanged fearful looks. No one wanted a test from the Supremacy. No one survived such things. What kind of test? Aiden asked. But the voice did not answer with words. Instead, space around them changed. Their sensors erupted with warnings. A storm of energy appeared ahead, violent, chaotic, twisting like a living hurricane. A dimensional rift. A spatial fracture. A cosmic trap. No ship should go through it. This is madness, the pilot whispered. We can't survive that. But the Supremacy commander spoke again. Enter the rift. If your ship holds, if your minds hold, then perhaps you deserve to continue. The message ended. The giant warship backed away, leaving a clear path straight into the deadly anomaly. Aiden stared at the swirling chaos. Lightning made of pure energy cracked across the void. Waves of gravitational force bent the stars around it. The ship shuddered just from being near it. Aiden looked at his crew, their faces pale but determined. We're not turning back, he said. We knew this wouldn't be easy. Keep shields at maximum. Follow my heading. Slow and steady. The Valiant inched forward. The closer they came, the more the ship groaned. Lights flickered. Panels shook. Powerful forces dragged at the hull. The stars twisted into spirals. Time itself felt slower. Longer. Every second felt stretched. The crew gripped their chairs tightly. The pilot fought the controls as the rift tried to pull them sideways. Hold it steady, Aiden ordered. The ship entered the swirling edge of the anomaly. Alarms exploded with noise. Energy lashed across the shields like lightning whips. The Valiant trembled violently. The gravity shifted. For a moment, everyone felt weightless, then crushed, then weightless again. The engineer shouted, "Shields at 40%. The lights turned red. The ship screamed under pressure. Aiden's vision blurred. Something heavy pressed against his chest. It felt like the rift was trying to squeeze the life out of him. But he stayed firm. Humans did not break. Push forward, he yelled. The pilot forced the engines to full power. The ship roared, shaking like it would tear apart. The rift brightened, swallowing them in blinding light. Then, everything went silent. And dark. For a moment, the Valiant drifted weightless in total blackness. The crew could not move. They could not speak. They could only breathe. Slowly, the darkness peeled away. Stars returned. Space settled. The ship floated into calm. They had passed through. Somehow, impossibly, they had survived. But Aiden felt something new. Something wrong. Something cold watching them from the shadows. They were not alone. The test was not over. A new presence waited ahead. And this time, it was not the Supremacy. The Valiant drifted out of the rift, its hull trembling softly as if it still remembered the crushing force that almost tore it apart. Commander Aiden Cross stood on the bridge, breathing slowly, trying to understand what they had just survived. No human ship had ever passed through something like that. No one even knew the Supremacy had such a weapon. The crew looked around in stunned silence, grateful to be alive but shaken to their core. The darkness around them felt heavier here, deeper, as if the space itself held secrets too old and too dangerous for human eyes. The stars were fewer, dimmer, and strangely bent, like they were afraid to shine. "Status?" Aiden asked quietly, trying to keep his voice steady. "Shields down to 20%, the engineer said. "Engines stable but overheating. Navigation is working, but not well." Aiden nodded. It was better than he expected. They should have been dead. Just as he thought this, a low beep came from the console. Then another. "Commander," the pilot whispered. "There's something on our hull." The words froze the bridge. Something was on the ship. Inside the Forbidden Zone, that could mean anything. Aiden leaned forward. "Where?" "Near the rear access panel. It's small, but heavy," the pilot said. "Around 2 meters long." The crew exchanged fearful looks. Nothing small in this place was safe. And nothing heavy clinging to a ship was friendly. Aiden opened the external camera feed. Static flickered across the screen. Then it cleared just long enough to show a dark shape latched onto the hull. It looked like a metallic creature, thin, sharp, with long claws sunk into the ship's surface. Its body pulsed with a faint red glow, and its head was shaped like a blade. It did not move. It just held on. Watching. Feeding information. "Supremacy Hunter drone," Aiden said. His voice dropped. Everyone had heard the stories. These drones did not attack right away. They tracked. They studied. And then, when their target was weak, they struck with precision. "Can we shake it off?" the engineer asked. "No," Aiden replied. "It's locked into the hull with quantum hooks. We'd tear our own ship apart trying." The drone's red lights flickered. Data was being transmitted. The Supremacy was still watching them. Still measuring them. Still waiting for them to fail. Aiden turned away from the screen. "Ignore it for now. We have a mission." But he could feel the fear in the room. The drone was like a ticking bomb. And the Supremacy was waiting for it to explode. Suddenly, sensors picked up movement ahead. A faint signal. Weak. Almost lost in the static. The distress beacon of the missing human research team. The same team they had come all this way to find. "It's them," the technician said, excitement and fear mixing in his voice. "They're alive. Signal is too weak to confirm. But something is broadcasting." Aiden leaned closer. Location. A small cluster of asteroids. About 20 minutes away. The Valiant changed direction, its engines humming tiredly. The drone crawled a few inches on the hull, adjusting itself as they moved. The crew tried not to look at it on the monitors. The forbidden zone around them grew darker. They approached a thick cluster of jagged asteroids shaped like broken teeth. Strange green mist swirled around them, glowing faintly, making everything look ghostly and sick. "I don't like this place," the pilot muttered. Aiden didn't either. The asteroids were too still. Too silent. As if they were waiting. The distress signal grew stronger as they moved in. It came from a narrow gap between two massive rocks. A tight squeeze, but not impossible. "Take us in slowly," Aiden said. The pilot guided the Valiant through the gap, the hull scraping lightly against space dust and debris. Inside the narrow passage, the green mist thickened. Lights flickered on and off. The gravity shifted in strange waves. It felt like the ship was passing through invisible barriers. The crew gripped their seats, uneasy. "I'm picking up energy signatures," the technician whispered. "Not human." That was not good. Not good at all. As they cleared the passage, they came upon a hollow space hidden inside the asteroid cluster, like a cave floating in the void. And in the middle of that cave was a structure. A broken metal outpost, old and abandoned. But not human. Only the research team's signal was human. So the team came here, Aiden murmured. But why? The outpost looked dead. No lights. No movement. But something felt wrong. Very wrong. As if the place was watching them just like the drone. Scan for life, Aiden ordered. Nothing, the technician replied. At least, nothing moving. The drone on their hull vibrated suddenly, its red eyes glowing brighter. It senses something, the engineer said. It knows this place. Aiden narrowed his eyes. Then we're in danger. The Valiant slowly approached the outpost. Its metal walls were cracked, marked with claw-like scars, burned from battles long forgotten. The distress signal came from inside. Aiden activated the loudspeaker. This is Commander Aiden Cross of the Valiant. If anyone is inside, respond. Only static answered. The silence felt heavy. Then, something hit the ship. A loud metallic thud echoed through the hull. The crew jumped. What was that? Something landed on us, the pilot said. Another drone? Aiden didn't answer. Another thud. Then another. Like steps. Something was climbing on the ship. Something big. The hunter drone on the hull turned its head, as if listening. Then its red lights turned dark. It powered down, like a predator lowering itself before another monster arrived. Aiden's heart tightened. If the drone was scared, whatever came was worse. Suddenly the outpost opened. A metal door slid up on its own, revealing darkness inside. A cold wind, impossible in space, seemed to blow out from the entrance. The distress signal stopped. The crew stared in horror. The door had opened for them. Or for whatever was behind them. The bridge lights flickered. The ship shook once more. And a deep, guttural sound echoed across the hull. Not mechanical. Not human. Something else. Something awake. Something hungry. Aiden knew they had just stepped into a trap far older than the Supremacy. And the real danger was only now beginning. The Valiant hovered in front of the ancient outpost, its metal walls cracked and covered in strange claw marks that looked nothing like the Supremacy's design. A cold, unnatural silence filled the hidden space inside the asteroid cluster. Commander Aiden Cross stared at the open doorway that had unlocked itself the moment they arrived. The darkness inside was so deep it swallowed the ship's lights. Aiden felt a chill crawl up his spine. It was wrong. Everything about this place was wrong. The distress signal from the missing research team had stopped the second the door opened, like something inside had been waiting for the humans to come to it. The crew sat frozen, listening to the faint scraping sounds echoing across the hull. Something large was still moving above them. The Supremacy hunter drone latched to the ship remained completely still, its red lights turned off, like even it feared making noise. Aiden forced himself to focus. "We need to find our people," he said. His voice was steady, but inside he felt the weight of the darkness pressing against him. "Prepare a small team for entry. I'll lead." The crew exchanged fearful looks. No one wanted to set foot inside that outpost, but they trusted Aiden. They always had. Aiden, Dr. Mara the medic, and Harris the weapons officer suited up. The airlock opened slowly, revealing the asteroid cave's sickly green mist drifting through the void like a glowing fog. They floated toward the ancient structure using their suit thrusters. As they neared the entrance, the darkness inside seemed to grow thicker, almost alive. Aiden switched on his suit light. The beam vanished into the blackness after a few meters, swallowed whole. "Something is wrong with the light here," Dr. Mara whispered. "It's like the darkness eats it." Harris scanned the walls with his visor. "The material is not Supremacy tech," he said. "It's older. Much older." They moved inside. The moment their boots touched the metal floor, a deep vibration passed beneath them, like the structure itself was breathing. The corridor stretched forward, lit only by their dim suit lights. Strange symbols were carved into the walls, crooked lines, spirals, and marks that moved subtly when no one was looking. Aiden felt eyes on him. Not the drone. Not the Supremacy. Something else. Something ancient. "Commander," Mara whispered, "I'm feeling watched." Aiden nodded. "Stay close. Keep weapons ready." They walked deeper into the outpost. Scratches covered the walls, some shallow, others deep enough to cut through metal. The deeper they went, the colder the air became, even though they were wearing sealed suits. It felt like the temperature inside the structure was dropping on its own. Their breath fogged inside their helmets. "Picking up a faint energy spike," Harris said, checking his scanner. "Very low. Very old. And human signal traces near it." Aiden's heart jumped. The research team? Maybe. They followed the signal down a narrow hallway and into a large chamber where the walls opened into a circular room. The center was filled with broken equipment, tools, and shattered lights. A faint blue beacon blinked weakly on the floor, the source of the distress signal. Aiden knelt beside it. "This belonged to the team," he said. "They were here." Dr. Mara looked around the room. "Where are their bodies?" Aiden stood slowly. There was no blood. No signs of a normal struggle. Only claw marks, and burn marks that were not from human weapons. Something else had taken them. Or chased them. Or worse. A loud creak echoed through the chamber. Everyone froze. The sound came from a door on the far side of the room. A slow, dragging noise followed, like something heavy being pulled across metal. Then the lights flickered, creating shadows that twisted along the walls. Aiden raised his weapon. "Someone's there," he said. "Or something." The dragging grew louder. Then it stopped just outside the doorway. Silence filled the room, thick, suffocating silence. Harris whispered, "Commander, whatever is behind that door is big." Aiden stepped forward slowly. "Identify yourself," he shouted. No response. Instead, the door suddenly slid open with a harsh metallic scream. The chamber filled with freezing wind that blew dust and debris into the air. Their suit lights flickered violently. A tall figure stood in the doorway, slumped, stumbling, and clearly injured. Dr. Mara gasped. That's one of ours." The figure collapsed onto the floor. They rushed to help. Aiden turned the body over gently. It was Dr. K. Nakamura, one of the missing scientists. Her face was pale, her suit torn, and her eyes wide with terror. She grabbed Aiden's arm with surprising strength for someone so weak. You shouldn't be here," she whispered. Aiden leaned in. "What happened? Where's the rest of your team?" Dr. Nakamura shook her head violently. No time. It's a wake." Harris looked around nervously. "What's a wake?" Dr. Nakamura's eyes filled with fear so deep it shook Aiden to his core. "The Supremacy didn't build this place," she said. "They found it. And they ran from it." Aiden felt a cold shock run through him. "What is IT?" Dr. Nakamura struggled to speak. "A machine, not alive, but thinking, angry, older than any empire." Suddenly the floor shook. Hard. Dust fell from the ceiling. The walls vibrated as a deep, echoing rumble spread through the outpost. Something massive was moving somewhere below them. Something waking up. Dr. Nakamura gasped. "It sensed you. It knows humans are here. It hates us." A loud metallic roar thundered through the halls, shaking the entire structure. Aiden's heart pounded. "We need to get back to the ship," he said. "Now." Harris lifted Nakamura onto his shoulder. They ran back down the corridor as the vibrations grew stronger, the walls cracking and shifting like the outpost was coming alive. The lights flickered violently. The shadows moved. The rumble grew into a louder, angrier roar. Something huge was coming. Aiden looked back once, and froze. A pair of glowing blue eyes appeared in the darkness behind them. Watching. Growing brighter. Getting closer. And with one final, massive metallic roar, the ancient machine awakened fully. The real nightmare of the Forbidden Zone had begun. As the human team moved deeper into the silent steel corridor, Part 4's shock still clung to them like cold fog, but Commander Rian forced himself forward, knowing hesitation was a luxury they could not afford. The Supremacy ship hummed with a strange rhythm, like a giant beast breathing in the dark, and every vibration pressed a warning into their bones. Yet none of them turned back. Ahead, the path opened into a wide chamber lit by dim blue lights, casting long shadows over strange machines that looked half alive. Rian scanned the room, his helmet shining faint reflections across the polished floor, and felt a slow chill creeping up his spine because something was waiting here. He didn't know what, but the air tasted heavy with it. Dr. Leah stepped beside him, her voice low as she whispered that she could sense movement behind the walls, like hidden veins carrying unknown energy. Cade raised his weapon, ready for anything, but nothing jumped out at them, and that silence made it even worse. This entire ship felt like a test built by something far beyond human understanding. They moved forward cautiously, passing strange organic cables and glowing pods, until suddenly a large circular door locked shut behind them with a deep metallic thud that echoed across the chamber. All of them froze, and Rian's jaw clenched as he shouted for everyone to stay alert because the chamber was changing. Slowly, the floor began to shift, rising into platforms while the lights brightened into a blazing blue glare. Machines unfolded from the walls, sleek and tall, shaped like silver statues with no faces. They stood in rows, unmoving, but every instinct in Rian's body screamed that these were not statues. A deep voice suddenly filled the chamber, cold and emotionless, saying, "Human presence confirmed. Phase 2 evaluation activated." The voice was not directed at one person. It felt like it was speaking to their existence. Leah whispered that they needed to run, but before she finished the floor trembled again and the silver figures took their first synchronized step. They moved like liquid metal, silent but deadly, and Cade fired a warning shot that bounced off their bodies like it was nothing. Panic rushed through the team, but Rian yelled for them to fall back as he tossed an EMP grenade. The explosion cracked with electric force, but instead of disabling the machines, the silver bodies absorbed the blast, glowing brighter. Leah shouted that they were adapting, learning from every human attack, which meant this was not a fight. They were inside a data-collecting experiment. The silver machines advanced, forming a perfect circle around the team, and one extended a hand, projecting a hologram of the Supremacy's emblem above them. The voice returned, saying humanity had crossed boundaries forbidden for lesser species. Rian replied with anger in his voice that humanity was not lesser and never would be. For a moment, the machines paused, as if analyzing his tone, and then the voice spoke again, saying their resistance would now be measured. In an instant, the floor split into shifting platforms, forcing the team to jump, dodge, and fight to stay upright. The machines didn't attack directly. They pressured, trapped, and tested every move, like watching humans struggle was the real goal. Cade lost his balance for a second and nearly fell into the gap below, a pit glowing with blue plasma. Leah grabbed his arm just in time, her breath shaky as she pulled him back. Rian kept shouting directions, pushing them toward a rising column at the chamber's far end. He had seen the pattern. The floor moved in cycles, giving small windows to escape. They had to reach that column before the cycle changed again. The machines reacted, shifting their formation to block the path, but humans were faster when desperation drove them. Cade slid under one machine's arm, firing at its joints not to damage it but to distract it. Leah threw a flash flare that exploded in bright white light, disorienting the sensors of two more. Rian took the lead, sprinting across shifting tiles that rose and fell under his boots like unstable waves. They reached the column, and before the machines could stop them, Rian slammed his hand against the panel. The column shot upward, lifting them toward a higher level of the gigantic Supremacy ship. As they rose, the machines stared from below, their glowing eyes following silently, and the voice echoed one last time through the chamber, saying, "Phase 3 begins now." The lift stopped inside a narrow hallway dimmer than the last, but much colder, the air thick like it hadn't been touched in years. Lee's voice trembled as she asked what Phase 3 meant. Rian didn't answer because he didn't know, but he felt something watching them, something far worse than the machines. At the end of the hallway, a large door slowly opened by itself, revealing darkness so deep it looked like space had been carved into a room. A sound came from inside, a slow, heavy breath that definitely did not belong to a machine. The team exchanged terrified looks. Whatever Phase 3 was, it was alive. And it was waiting for them. Rian lifted his weapon, his voice steady even though his heart hammered in his chest, and said, "Stay together, no matter what." Then he stepped into the darkness first, because humanity does not break. As Commander Rian stepped into the darkness, the rest of the team followed closely, their breathing slow and careful, like each step might wake something ancient. The air inside the chamber was colder than anything they had felt on the Supremacy ship so far, cold enough to burn their lungs, and every sound echoed with a strange delay as if the room swallowed noise before giving it back. A faint blue glow appeared ahead, slowly revealing the outline of a massive circular chamber carved from dark metal. Strange markings covered the walls, twisted symbols that looked older than the Supremacy itself. Rian felt the hair on his arms stand because these symbols looked almost human in design, but not quite. It was as if something had watched humanity from a distance long before this moment. At the center of the chamber stood a huge structure, shaped like a cocoon, pulsing softly with white light. Cade whispered that the thing inside was alive. Leah raised her scanner, but it immediately overloaded, sparks shooting from the device as the chamber reacted to her technology. The cocoon's glow brightened, and a deep vibration rolled through the floor, shaking dust from the ceiling. Rian ordered everyone to stay back, but the command came too late. The cocoon cracked. A sharp, echoing sound like a giant bone splitting filled the chamber. A line of blinding blue light ran down the cocoon's surface before the entire shell peeled open like a flower. Inside, a tall figure slowly rose, its skin metallic but soft, almost like living silver. It opened its eyes, and they glowed with a deep blue flame. Leah gasped because this being was not like the machines. They could feel something in its presence, something intelligent, something aware. The being looked at them without blinking, then spoke in a voice that carried layers of echoes, as if many voices spoke at once. "Humanity," it said, "you have stepped into the final threshold." Rian tightened his grip on his weapon and demanded to know if it was going to kill them. The being tilted its head, a strange, almost curious gesture, and replied that killing was not the purpose. "You are here to be measured," it said. "Your kind has crossed the forbidden zone. Such action demands evaluation." Cade muttered that he hated the word evaluation, especially when alien monsters used it. The being stepped down from the cocoon platform, moving with a grace that made no sound, and the chamber rippled with energy in response to its presence. It raised one hand, and instantly the walls lit up, showing holograms of human history. Wars, victories, disasters, triumphs, every scene flowing around them in a circle. The being explained that the Supremacy gathered data on every species, but humans were unpredictable, dangerous, and curious in ways no other species had been. "You adapt," the being said. "You evolve through conflict. You rise when you are supposed to fall. This terrifies the Supremacy." Leah stepped forward, asking why humans were considered a threat when they had never attacked the Supremacy first. The being's eyes glowed brighter as it responded that fear was not always born from violence. It could also come from potential. "Your potential to grow," it said, "is greater than any species the Supremacy has encountered." Suddenly, the chamber darkened, and a second vibration surged up from the floor. The being frowned, looking toward the ceiling as if listening to something invisible. Rian noticed its expression changing from calm to urgency. "The machines," the being said. "They are coming. They wish to stop this encounter." Cade cursed under his breath. Leah asked why the machines would stop them. The being replied that the Supremacy feared humans learning the truth, that their strength was not a threat but a possibility. Before anyone could ask more, the door behind them slammed open with a thunderous boom, and silver machines poured in, moving faster than before, their blue eyes burning brighter. Rian yelled for the team to take cover, but the being stepped in front of them, raising both arms. A wave of force burst from its body, hurling the first row of machines backward like they were toys. The machines recovered quickly, adapting again, their bodies reshaping into more dangerous forms with extended blades and glowing cores. The being turned to Rian and shouted that it could hold them back for only a short time. They needed to escape through the far chamber door before the machines overwhelmed them. Rian didn't want to leave the being behind, but it insisted, saying humanity had to survive because their survival meant something greater than anyone yet understood. The machines attacked again, dozens rushing forward in synchronized motion. The being unleashed another wave of energy, cracking the floor under its feet, but Rian could see its strength fading. He grabbed Leah and Cade, yelling that they had to move. The team sprinted across the chamber, dodging falling debris and the violent shock waves from the battle behind them. Halfway across, a machine dropped from the ceiling, landing right in front of them. Cade tackled it, shoving it aside while Leah fired into its sensors, finally disrupting its vision long enough to get past. They reached the far door, and Rian slammed his hand on the panel. The door groaned open slowly, too slowly, and Cade shouted at it to hurry. Behind them, the being cried out as a dozen machines tackled it at once, but it still held them off, its body glowing with intense blue light. The being turned its head toward Rian, meeting his eyes for one final moment, and spoke with a quiet voice filled with urgency. "Humanity must not break." Then the light exploded around it as the machines swarmed. Rian pulled his team through the door just as it sealed shut, the chamber shaking violently. He stood breathing hard, realizing they had escaped, but the real battle had only just begun. The door sealed shut behind Rian, and the sound of metal locking into place echoed through the narrow corridor like a final warning that there was no turning back. The air was thick and stale, as if no one had breathed it for centuries, and dim red emergency lights flickered along the ceiling, casting long shadows that made everything feel more hostile. Cade leaned against the wall, panting hard, sweat dripping down his face as he asked if the being was still alive on the other side. Rian didn't answer because he didn't know, and the silence felt heavy enough to crush his chest. Leah swallowed hard and whispered that whatever Phase 3 was, they were now in the heart of it. The corridor stretched long and straight ahead, ending in a faint white glow that looked too soft for a ship built by the Supremacy. Rian motioned for them to move, each step echoing down the metal hallway like footsteps inside a tomb. The floor vibrated slightly, as if the ship itself was shifting in response to their presence. The glow grew brighter as they approached, and Rian raised his hand to slow the team. The corridor opened into a massive observation chamber shaped like a dome, and inside were hundreds of transparent pods arranged in spirals from floor to ceiling. Leah gasped when she saw what was inside each pod. Different alien species frozen in stasis, suspended mid-movement, their expressions locked in fear, anger, or confusion. Some looked ancient, with dust covering their containers. Some looked almost new, as if captured only days ago. None of them were human. Cade whispered that it felt like they were walking inside a graveyard of civilizations. Rian felt a rising dread in his stomach because this wasn't an observation room, it was a trophy room. A warning. A place where the Supremacy stored species that didn't pass the evaluation. Leah moved toward a small console at the center of the room, its surface glowing with shifting symbols. She touched it lightly, and the room reacted instantly. The light above them brightened, and the pods closest to them lit up with data. Lee's eyes widened as she read the symbols. They weren't random, they were test results. Strength, adaptability, intelligence, resistance, cooperation. Species after species listed with failing marks. These civilizations didn't survive the tests, Leah whispered. This is what happens to any species that challenges the Supremacy. Cade slammed his fist against a pod in frustration, but the material was harder than diamond. Rian stepped beside him, his voice calm but filled with a burning anger. "This is why they fear humans," he said. "We don't follow their rules. We don't break." As if responding to his words, the room suddenly dimmed. A deep hum filled the air, followed by the same cold voice they had heard before. Phase 3 initiation confirmed. Humanity will now be judged. The pods around them began to vibrate, their lights flickering like they were waking up. Leah shouted that something was coming online, something big. Rian ordered them to take cover behind a row of pods just as the floor split open with a grinding roar. A platform rose from below, carrying a massive machine, twice the size of the others they had faced, its body layered with black armor and glowing red lines that pulsed like veins. Its head turned slowly toward them, and a deep mechanical growl rumbled from within its core. Cade whispered that this one wasn't here to test, they could feel it. This one was here to kill. The machine fired a shockwave that blasted across the chamber, shattering several pods and sending shards of glass flying like lethal rain. Rian pulled Leah down just in time as a burning piece of metal shot past her head. Cade rolled behind a console, shouting that the machine was too strong to face directly. Rian scanned the room rapidly, his mind racing. This machine was too heavy, too armored, too powerful to defeat in a normal fight. They needed another way. Leah pointed at the walls and yelled that the machine was drawing power directly from the ship. If they cut the energy, it might weaken. Rian dashed toward a small panel near the wall, dodging another shockwave that exploded behind him. The machine turned its focus on him, firing a red beam that sliced through two pods, melting them instantly. Cade yelled to distract it, firing a burst of shots that ricocheted off its armor but at least drew its attention away from Rian. Leah knelt beside the panel, her fingers flying across the controls, trying to decode the alien interface. The machine roared again, moving faster now, its limbs transforming into sharper weapons. It charged toward Leah, but Rian tackled her out of the way just as the machine's blade arm slammed into the metal floor, sending sparks flying. Cade cursed loudly, yelling that the machine was adapting again. Leah finally screamed that she found it, a manual override. But it required power from multiple points. Rian didn't hesitate. "We split up," he said. "Hit every power node you can find." They sprinted in different directions, the machine analyzing their movements. It transformed again, forming 3 separate targeting beams, one aimed at each of them. Rian slammed his hand onto the first node, causing the lights above him to flicker and fade. Leah activated the second node, gasping for breath as the machine turned toward her. Cade found the third node behind a broken console, smashing it open with the butt of his rifle and slamming the switch. A deep alarm echoed through the chamber. The machine froze for 1 second, then its red glow flickered violently. It staggered, its weapons folding inward as its power weakened. But instead of collapsing, it let out a furious metallic roar, activating a self-destruct pulse. Rian's eyes widened as he shouted for everyone to run. They bolted toward the far exit as the machine's armor cracked with blinding light. The explosion hit like a star collapsing, ripping through the room, shattering pods, and throwing them forward with brutal force. Rian hit the ground hard, ears ringing, vision blurred. He forced himself up, calling for Leah and Cade. Through the smoke he saw them, alive but shaken, and behind them, the burning remains of the machine. But before he could celebrate, the cold Supremacy voice returned, this time harsher, angrier. "Phase 4 begins now." Rian felt the floor shift under his boots. He realized the real test hadn't even started yet. The corridor beyond the destroyed chamber was narrow, dimly lit, and filled with the acrid smell of burning metal. But Commander Rian forced himself and the team forward, every step heavy with exhaustion, every breath echoing through the walls like a warning that the danger was far from over. Leah held her scanner tightly, her hands trembling, and whispered that the power surge from the destroyed machine must have triggered the next phase of the Supremacy's test, and Rian's stomach tightened because he knew the Supremacy's idea of tests always ended in death if you failed. Cade kept his rifle ready, eyes darting across every shadow, every flicker of light, expecting more machines, more traps, more horrors waiting to strike from the darkness. The floor vibrated faintly under their boots as if the ship itself was alive, responding to the presence of intruders, and the team felt every subtle shift, every microquake, like the corridor was a living thing judging them. Suddenly, the walls around them lit up with strange symbols that moved and shifted as if communicating directly with their minds. Leah gasped when she realized that the symbols were instructions, guiding them toward a central chamber that the Supremacy had designed for the final evaluation. Rian nodded grimly, telling them to follow the signs but to remain alert because every signal could be a trap. The hallway twisted and turned, long passages folding impossibly into one another, until finally they arrived at a massive doorway that seemed to pulse with an inner light, the hum of power vibrating through the floor like a heartbeat. Rian stepped forward and activated the door panel, which responded immediately, sliding open with a hiss to reveal a colossal chamber filled with glowing conduits, pulsing machines, and a central platform that looked alive. On the platform rested a new form, larger and more imposing than the machine they had just defeated. Its body was black metal, but it moved like a living creature, its limbs flexing, energy flowing visibly through veins of glowing red. Its head turned toward them, and a voice echoed in the chamber, deep and layered, speaking in a tone that shook the floor. "Humanity has survived previous tests. But survival is not proof of strength. Your adaptability will now be measured directly." Rian felt a cold sweat run down his back. He motioned to Leah and Cade to stay close. The being before them was alive, but more than that, it was aware, thinking, analyzing. The red glow in its body pulsed faster, and the air crackled with energy. Without warning, it launched a wave of force across the chamber, sending Rian and the others flying backward into a wall. Dust and sparks filled the air, and Rian struggled to his feet, checking on Leah and Cade. Both were shaken but alive. "We can't fight it head-on," he said, breathing hard. "We have to use strategy." The being advanced slowly, each step sending vibrations through the floor, forcing the humans to jump aside to avoid falling into energy traps that sprang from the ground. Rian's mind raced. He knew their weapons were useless. The being's armor could not be pierced. Then he remembered the data from the destroyed machine. It had been powered by the ship. If they could manipulate the conduits in the chamber, maybe they could weaken it, redirect its energy, and gain a chance to survive. He pointed to the nearest conduit. "Leah, can you reroute the energy from that node to the platform?" She nodded, wiping sweat from her brow, her fingers flying across the panel as she connected the circuits manually. Sparks flew, and the chamber shivered violently. The being roared, its glowing red eyes narrowing in recognition of the human interference. "You tamper with forces you cannot control," it growled. The floor erupted in glowing lines that shot toward them like whips of molten energy, forcing the team to dodge and leap while keeping the conduit connection active. Cade blocked several strikes with his rifle, buying time as Rian helped guide Leah through the wires, making sure the energy flowed properly. The being's attacks became faster, more intelligent, anticipating their moves, but Rian realized it was not perfect. It analyzed, calculated, and tried to predict, but humans were chaotic. They did not always move logically. Using this, he directed Cade to lure the being into a pattern that forced it toward a section of conduits Leah had set to overload. Sparks flew as energy arced wildly across the chamber. The being staggered, its red glow flickering as it roared in frustration. Rian yelled for them to push harder, and Leah completed the connection, forcing the central platform to surge with redirected energy. The being convulsed as the power from the platform struck it, weakening its movements. For the first time, Rian saw hesitation in its motion. He seized the moment and shouted for the team to push toward the exit at the far end of the chamber. The platform shuddered violently, throwing debris everywhere, but the being's stagger allowed the humans to move quickly. Cade grabbed a nearby panel and swung it to block an incoming energy blast, while Rian and Leah sprinted side by side, hearts pounding, lungs burning. The exit grew closer, and the floor shook more violently with each step. The being roared, its voice echoing through the chamber in anger, fear, and disbelief that humans had survived and interfered with its control. Sparks shot across the walls, and a deep vibration split the floor beneath their feet. They were almost at the exit. One final surge of energy from the platform shot upward like a mini-explosion, throwing Rian backward. He rolled and jumped, grabbing Lee's hand as she fell. Cade tackled another surge and pulled himself up. They crossed the threshold together, slamming the door behind them as the central chamber erupted in a wave of fire, sparks, and collapsing conduits. Silence fell, broken only by the faint hum of the remaining energy in the ship. Rian collapsed against the wall, breathing heavily, sweat and soot covering his face. Leah and Cade staggered beside him, shaken but alive. The voice of the being echoed one last time, fading into silence. "Humanity, you endure, but Phase 5 approaches." Rian clenched his fists, staring at the doorway ahead, knowing that surviving this test was only the beginning, that the Supremacy's evaluation was far from over, and that whatever awaited in Phase 5 would be even deadlier. Yet he also felt a spark deep inside. Humans did not break, humans did not bend, and they would face whatever came next together. Commander Rian and his team moved cautiously down the narrow corridor beyond the destroyed chamber, their bodies still trembling from the sheer force of the last encounter, and every sound echoed like a warning that Phase 5 had already begun. The air smelled of burnt metal and electricity, and the faint hum of the ship's energy systems vibrated through the floor, reminding them that they were still deep inside the Supremacy vessel, surrounded by technology far beyond human understanding. Leah kept her scanner active, her hand shaking slightly as she tried to make sense of the readings, while Cade held his rifle at the ready, eyes scanning every shadow, every flicker of light, expecting the next threat to emerge at any moment. Rian motioned for them to stay close, knowing that the narrow halls could be deadly if the Supremacy or their machines chose to ambush them. The corridor twisted unnaturally, bending at angles that seemed impossible, and the walls were covered in faint glowing symbols that shifted subtly, as if alive, communicating directly with something unseen. "The symbols," Leah whispered. "They're changing. They're reacting to us." Rian felt a chill run down his spine because he knew that meant the Supremacy was not just watching, they were adjusting, learning from their every movement. Ahead, a faint red light glowed, pulsing in rhythm with something deep inside the ship. Rian could feel the vibration in his chest, a heavy, steady beat, like the heartbeat of a living machine. "That's it," he said quietly. "That must be the control hub. Phase 5 is centered there." The team moved forward cautiously, each step measured, as the hallway opened into a massive chamber filled with conduits, pulsing energy streams, and suspended platforms that rotated slowly like giant gears. At the center was a tall, imposing figure, different from the previous machine. Its body was metallic but fluid, constantly shifting, limbs reshaping as it moved. Its glowing red eyes fixed on the humans immediately, and the deep layered voice echoed through the chamber. "You have survived the prior phases. Now your limits will be tested. Survival alone is insufficient." Rian tightened his grip on his rifle, though he knew their weapons were almost useless. The figure moved with unnatural speed, slamming a massive arm into the floor, sending shockwaves across the chamber that threw the humans off balance. Leah scrambled to stabilize herself, checking the conduits on the walls for any chance to interfere with the machine's energy. Sparks flew from the panels as she began rerouting power, trying to disrupt its flow. The figure advanced, stepping onto the moving platforms with precision, its body almost liquid in motion. Cade fired bursts at its glowing core, not to harm it but to distract it, buying precious seconds for Leah. Rian scanned the room quickly and realized that the platforms themselves could be used to their advantage. If they could manipulate the energy flow, they might trap the machine in a confined section. "Leah, divert the main conduit to the platform under it," he shouted. Lee's fingers flew across the controls, sweat dripping from her face as energy sparks lanced from the panels. The machine roared in response, its voice shaking the chamber as it sensed the interference. It lashed out, sending a wave of kinetic force toward the humans, and Rian barely managed to push Cade and Leah out of the way. The floor cracked under the force, and dust and debris fell from the ceiling. Rian realized they needed to move quickly or the platform itself would collapse. He grabbed a smaller control panel and activated the floor mechanisms, causing the platforms to shift, isolating the machine in a section where the energy flow could trap it temporarily. Sparks shot across the chamber as the figure struggled against the sudden restriction, its glowing red eyes narrowing in recognition of the human interference. "It's adapting faster than before," Leah shouted, her voice tight with fear. Rian didn't answer. He focused on guiding Cade and Leah across the moving platforms toward the far exit. The machine lunged, its fluid body stretching impossibly, smashing parts of the platforms as it tried to reach them. Rian fired a warning shot into one of the panels, creating a temporary shockwave that staggered it long enough to gain a few meters. Dust and sparks flew, and the platforms quaked violently beneath their feet. Finally, they reached the exit, a heavy doorway pulsing with soft white light, and Rian slammed his hand on the panel to open it. The machine's glowing red eyes followed them, but the energy diversion held it in place for a moment longer. They sprinted through the doorway, stumbling into a narrow hallway beyond, gasping for breath, hearts hammering from adrenaline and fear. Behind them, the chamber erupted in a violent explosion of energy, lights flashing and machinery collapsing as the machine struggled against the conduit trap. Rian pressed his back to the wall, breathing hard, realizing they had survived another phase but that the Supremacy's evaluation was far from over. Leah looked at him, eyes wide, her voice trembling. "Phase 5? It's not over. Whatever that was, it's not finished." Cade leaned against the wall, rifle lowered, wiping sweat from his brow. "How many more phases are there?" he asked quietly. Rian didn't answer immediately because he didn't know. But deep inside, he felt the truth. The Supremacy had designed these tests to push humans beyond what they thought possible, to strip away every weakness and fear. And yet, despite the impossible odds, they had survived again. The narrow corridor ahead twisted once more, fading into darkness, and the distant hum of the ship's energy systems carried a warning in every vibration. Phase 6 was waiting. Rian clenched his fists, staring into the darkness, and whispered to himself, "Humans do not break. Humans do not bend. We face whatever comes next, together. The team followed, silent, tense, and ready for the challenges ahead, each step deeper into the Supremacy's heart, a test of courage, endurance, and survival that no human had ever faced before. Commander Rian led his team deeper into the twisting corridor, their boots echoing loudly against the metallic floor as if the ship itself were listening, waiting to judge every step, and the air grew colder with each passing meter, carrying the faint smell of burnt energy and decay that made Leah gag softly, while Cade gritted his teeth, gripping his rifle tightly, eyes scanning the shadows for the next threat. The narrow passage eventually opened into a colossal chamber, larger than anything they had seen before, filled with pulsating energy conduits that crisscrossed the ceiling and walls like veins, glowing in a sickly green and blue light, illuminating hundreds of dormant machines of various shapes, each one larger and more complex than the last. At the center of the chamber rose a massive platform with a glowing pedestal, and atop it hovered a figure that radiated power, intelligence, and malice all at once. Its body was metallic yet fluid, constantly shifting, with glowing veins of energy that coursed visibly beneath its surface, and its eyes blazed a deep, fiery blue as it surveyed the humans. The voice of the entity filled the chamber, deep, layered, and impossible to ignore, saying, "You have survived the trials of the Supremacy, yet survival is not enough. Your species must prove its worth, its strength, its resilience. This is the final evaluation." Rian felt a chill run down his spine, his gut tightening as he realized they had reached the ultimate phase. "Stay alert," he whispered to Leah and Cade, though the words felt hollow in the immense, oppressive space. The figure raised an arm, and instantly the conduits along the walls activated, firing streams of energy that arced across the chamber like living lightning. The floor trembled violently under their boots as the humans scrambled for cover behind overturned panels and broken machinery. Cade fired bursts at the advancing energy streams, hoping to distract them, while Leah scanned the central pedestal, her fingers flying across her portable console in search of any way to interfere. The being moved with unnatural speed, each step sending vibrations through the floor, and with a single motion, it created a barrier of energy that separated Rian from the rest of the team. Rian felt his pulse spike. He had to get back to them, had to find a way to survive this phase. He noticed a series of conduits leading from the walls directly to the pedestal, and an idea formed. "Leah, can you overload the pedestal?" he shouted. She hesitated, fear evident in her voice. "It's risky. If I fail, we're all dead." Rian's eyes locked with hers. "We don't have a choice. It's the only way." She nodded, starting to reroute the energy flows. Sparks flew, the walls hummed louder, and the machines around them activated, sensing the interference. The figure's roar shook the chamber, and streams of energy surged toward Rian, forcing him to dive behind a console. Cade lunged across the floor, slamming his body against one of the conduits to temporarily disrupt the energy, buying time for Leah. The pedestal began to glow brighter, pulsing with an intense light that made the chamber feel like it was collapsing in on itself. The entity roared in fury, launching a direct wave of kinetic force at the humans, throwing debris everywhere. Rian pushed himself up, ducking under falling sparks and metal, and shouted, "Almost there!" Leah worked faster, sweat pouring down her face, her fingers bleeding from the heat of the panels. The energy streams from the walls became chaotic, striking at random, but Rian noticed that as the pedestal's glow increased, the entity's movement slowed slightly, its body flickering like it was destabilizing. Finally, with a piercing cry, Leah completed the circuit. The pedestal erupted in blinding white light, sending a shockwave through the entire chamber. The machines froze mid-motion, their glowing eyes dimming, and the figure staggered, energy crackling uncontrollably along its body. The humans were thrown backward by the force, slamming into walls, but they quickly scrambled to their feet. The figure roared one last time, a sound that reverberated through every bone in their bodies, and then, in an instant, the light consumed it completely. Silence followed, thick and heavy, broken only by the hum of the ship's failing energy systems. Rian, Cade, and Leah stood in the center of the chamber, hearts pounding, chests heaving, staring at the empty pedestal where the figure had once hovered. The room felt alive and quiet at the same time, as if the ship were acknowledging their survival. Rian wiped sweat and soot from his face, looking at his team. "We made it," he whispered. Cade shook his head, disbelief and relief mixing. "I can't believe we survived that thing. Leah swallowed hard, still scanning the room for any sign of danger. "It's over, for now," she said. The chamber began to stabilize, the glowing conduits dimming to a calm hum. The energy from the pedestal dissipated, leaving the room dark but safe. Rian motioned for the team to move toward the nearest exit, their bodies trembling but determined. As they walked, the ship groaned and shuddered, remnants of the Supremacy's tests and energy surges still affecting the massive vessel. They finally reached the main corridor leading to the Valiant's docking bay, and for the first time, the cold emptiness of space outside felt welcoming, familiar, human. The hunter drone from earlier hovered silently near the entrance, motionless, as if acknowledging their survival before retreating into the shadows. Rian exhaled deeply, looking at Leah and Cade. "We survived all 10 phases. Against every impossible test, every machine, every trap, they underestimated humanity." The voice of the Supremacy did not return. For the first time, silence felt like victory. The humans had endured, adapted, and survived where countless others had perished. Rian stepped onto the ramp of the Valiant, helping Leah and Cade aboard, and the ship powered up, its engines humming softly. As they ascended from the Supremacy vessel, leaving the dark, twisted corridors behind, Rian knew that their mission was more than survival. It was proof of humanity's resilience, courage, and indomitable spirit. The stars stretched before them, endless and bright, and he whispered to himself, "Humans do not break. Humans do not bend. And we will never stop." With the Valiant moving steadily through the void, the trio looked out at the infinite expanse of space, hearts filled with exhaustion but also triumph, knowing that their species had faced the unthinkable and survived. Whatever challenges awaited in the universe, whatever tests or enemies lay ahead, humanity had proven it could endure, adapt, and rise. And for now, in this moment, they were victorious.